Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am incredibly glad you are here with us today because, honestly, we have a monster on the desk.
We really do.
And I don't mean a monster in terms of being, scary, though the implications are pretty heavy. I mean a monster in terms of just sheer density.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a stack of legal text that has, well, it's dominated the headlines, it's sparked protests, launched a ton of lawsuits.
And it's the kind of topic where everyone has an opinion, but very, very few people have actually, read the source code.
That's it, exactly. We are talking about Texas,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the Texas Penal Code Chapter 51.
Right.
You might know it as part of Senate Bill 4 or SB 4. But before we dive into the weeds, and I promise you we are going to get into the microscopic weeds today, I have a mission for you.
A quick one.
A very quick one. If you value this kind of breakdown, if you like being the person in the room who actually knows what the law says versus what the TD says it says, please just take 1 second and hit that subscribe button right now.
It's the single best way to support what we do.
It is. It helps us grow, and it keeps these deep dives coming. Also, check out our website. We have the full text of the statutes we are discussing today linked up there so you can see it with your own eyes.
And it really, really helps to see the actual text while we're talking about it.
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, housekeeping done. Let's set the stage.
Let's do it.
Today is not about politics. I want to be super, super clear about that. We aren't here to debate whether the border policy is good, bad, moral, or immoral.
Nope. We are mechanics today.
Exactly. We are popping the hood on this legislative engine, and we are going to explain how the pistons fire, how the gears turn, how the whole thing is supposed to work.
That is the perfect analogy. Our job is to look at the text of this chapter, illegal entry into this state, and just figure out the who, the what, and the how.
Who does it apply to?
What exactly constitutes a crime under this new law?
And how do the penalties and the defenses actually work?
Right, because when you strip away all the rhetoric, you are left with a very specific, very intricate set of instructions for police, for judges, and for defendants.
And it is intricate. I was reading through the prep notes and some of the definitions. I mean, they felt like a logic puzzle. So let's start at the very foundation. If we are building a house, this is the concrete slab.
Section 51.01, the definitions.
Right.
This is critical. This section dictates the scope of everything that follows. If you don't fit the definitions here, the rest of the chapter, it just doesn't touch you.
Okay, so first word up is alien. Now, in normal conversation or, even in sci-fi movies, that word has a specific vibe. But in the Texas Penal Code, it points to a very, very specific federal statute. The text says alien has the meaning assigned by 8 U.S.C. Section 1101.
Correct, and that's pretty standard. That's the federal definition used in all immigration law. It's the bedrock.
Oh, wait, I'm looking at the text here, and there is like a little asterisk attached to it. It doesn't just say see federal law. It says, and I'm quoting, as that provision existed on January 1st, 2023.
Ah, yes. That is the key phrase. That date is absolutely crucial.
Why the timestamp? I mean,
Yeah.
Why do that? Usually when a state law references a federal law, don't they just say whatever the federal law says at the time? Why anchor it to New Year's Day 2023? Is this just some kind of, copy-paste thing?
No, not at all. This is actually a very deliberate and pretty sophisticated piece of constitutional engineering. It's a concept in law called static incorporation versus dynamic incorporation.
Okay, static versus dynamic. Unpack that for us. What does that mean?
Well, think about it this way. If Texas just said alien means whatever the federal government says it means, that would be dynamic incorporation.
So it's a live link.
It's a live link, exactly. The definition is alive. It moves. If Congress meets next year and decides to completely redefine the word alien, maybe they narrow it, maybe they expand it to include or exclude millions of people, the Texas law would automatically change right along with it.
Oh, wow. So in that scenario, the Texas legislature wouldn't even have to meet. They wouldn't have to vote. Washington would basically be rewriting the Texas Penal Code remotely.
Precisely. And the drafters of this Texas law clearly did not want that. They wanted sovereignty over their own statute. So by saying January 1, 2023, they are, in effect, freezing time.
Freezing time.
They are taking a snapshot of the federal code on that specific day and saying, this right here, this is our dictionary, and it doesn't change.
So it doesn't matter what happens in 25 or 2030.
Not for this law. If the federal government passes a massive immigration reform bill in 2026 that changes all the terminology, Texas Penal Code Chapter 51 doesn't care. It is locked to the 2023 version.
That's incredibly rigid, though, isn't it? What if the federal definition actually improves? Or what if there's a typo in the 2023 version that they fix later?
Then Texas is stuck with the typo. They're stuck with it until the Texas legislature meets again to amend their own state law. It's a trade-off, you see. They are trading flexibility for control. They want to ensure that this state law is immune to shifting political winds in Washington.
So it's like saving a PDF of a website instead of just bookmarking the URL.
That is a perfect analogy.
The URL might change its content, the link might break, but the PDF is locked on your hard drive forever, exactly as it was when you saved it.
That is precisely what they did. Texas has downloaded the PDF of the word alien as it existed on January 1st, 2023.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's a control mechanism. All right, so the second definition is port of entry. The text says this means a port of entry as designated by, let me see it, 19 CFR Part 101. What does that actually mean in plain English? Because I definitely don't have 19 CFR Part 101 memorized.
I don't think anyone does. But it's pretty simple. 19 CFR is the Code of Federal Regulations that deals with customs duties. Part 101 is literally just a list. It is a long official list of every airport, every seaport, every land border crossing that the U.S. government has officially designated as a port.
So we're talking about the bridge in Laredo, the airport in Houston, the crossing at El Paso, the official places.
Exactly. Think of the entire state border like a big house. You have a front door, maybe a side door, and a back door. Those are your ports of entry.
And then you have the windows.
You have the windows, the chimney, the gap in the backyard fence, the loose floorboard in the garage.
Right. And the law we are talking about today is concerned exclusively with the people coming in through the chimney.
Precisely. The law has to define port of entry specifically so it can then criminalize being not at a port of entry. It's defining the front door so it can punish you for using the window.
Got it. So we have the players defined, we have the alien using the 2023 terms, and we have the port of entry, which are the official front doors. And just for the record, the source text notes the effective date of all this.
Yes, March 5, 2024. That's when this specific chapter, added by the acts of the 2023 legislature, officially becomes the law of the land in Texas.
Okay, foundation laid. Now, let's move to Section 2. This is the big one, the actual crime. Section 51.02. Illegal entry from foreign nation.
Yes.
This is the part everyone talks about. But from a legal perspective, how does a prosecutor actually prove it? What are the ingredients?
Well, subsection A of that section breaks it down into 4 distinct elements. If you're a prosecutor, you literally have a checklist. You have to tick 4 boxes to get a conviction.
Okay, let's walk through the checklist. Box number 1.
The person is an alien. And again, that goes right back to that section 51.01 definition we just talked about, the one locked in time.
Okay, that's straightforward. What's box number 2?
The person enters, or, and this is important, attempts to enter the state.
Attempts. So you don't actually have to succeed if you get caught halfway across the river, or maybe you're climbing a fence but you haven't hit the ground on the Texas side yet?
That counts.
Oh.
Under this law, the attempt is treated the same as the completion, at least in terms of the elements of the crime.
Interesting. Okay, box 3. This is the one that really caught my eye. Enters directly from a foreign nation.
This is a crucial limitation, and it's one that's often overlooked in the public debate.
So play this out for me. Let's create a hypothetical person. Let's call him Mateo. So Mateo crosses the border illegally, but he does it into New Mexico.
Okay.
He hikes across the desert, avoids the checkpoints, stays off the radar. Then a few days later, he walks across the state line from New Mexico into West Texas. He is an alien. He is in Texas. He didn't come through a port of entry. Is he guilty under Section 51.02 of this new Texas law?
In that specific scenario, no, he is not.
Really? But he's here illegally. He's in Texas.
He might be violating federal law, certainly, and he might be violating other state statutes, maybe trespassing on private property or something. But he has not violated this specific statute.
Because of that word directly.
Because of the word directly. The text explicitly requires the entry into Texas to be directly from a foreign nation. Mateo entered Texas from New Mexico, which is another U.S. state.
That seems like a massive loophole. Why would they write it that way? Why not just say enters Texas illegally?
It's almost certainly a constitutional strategy. The Supreme Court has generally held that states have more legal leeway to police their own physical international borders when they are facing, what they might call an imminent incursion or invasion. By focusing only on the international boundary, the actual line between Texas and Mexico-Texas is building an argument that this is about border integrity and security, not about general immigration enforcement inside the country.
I see. So if they arrested Mateo for crossing from Oklahoma or New Mexico, that argument falls apart.
it completely falls apart because at that point, he's already inside the United States. It's no longer a border crossing issue.
So this law is spatially tethered to the Rio Grande and the physical international line. It's geographically specific.
Precisely. It is all about the act of crossing that specific line.
Okay, it's a key distinction. And the final box, box 4.
The entry occurs at any location other than a lawful port of entry.
The window, not the front door.
The window, not the front door.
Okay, so let's put it all together for section 51.02. To be guilty. You are an alien. You cross or try to cross the border directly from Mexico into Texas.
Okay.
And you do it somewhere that isn't an official bridge or checkpoint.
Correct. That is the complete conduct that is prohibited.
All right, now let's talk consequences. Because a law without a penalty is just, a strongly worded suggestion.
Right.
What happens to you if you get caught doing this? Subsection B lays it out.
The standard penalty, so if this is your first time being charged with a specific law, is a Class B misdemeanor.
Class B misdemeanor. For those of us who don't spend our time in criminal court, can you translate that for us? Is that like a slap on the wrist? A parking ticket?
It is definitely more than a parking ticket. In the Texas hierarchy of crimes, a Class B misdemeanor is on the same level as, say, a first offense DWI, or possession of up to 2 ounces of marijuana.
So real jail time is on the table.
Oh, yes. The potential punishment is up to 180 days in a county jail and a fine of up to $2,000. But honestly, the real consequence here isn't just the jail time. It's getting that criminal record and the potential for deportation, which is a whole other process we'll get to.
But the penalty doesn't stay a misdemeanor forever, does it? There's an escalator built into this law.
There is, a very important one. Subsection B2 says the offense becomes a state jail felony if it is shown on the trial of the offense that the defendant has been previously convicted of an offense under the section.
Okay, so let's go back to our guy Mateo. Let's say he crosses illegally into Texas this time. He gets caught. He gets convicted of the Class B misdemeanor. He serves his time, or maybe he gets deported. A month later, he tries to cross again. Same spot, same method.
Now the entire game has changed. Because he has that prior conviction under this specific section, he's no longer looking at a misdemeanor. He is now facing a state jail felony.
So we just jumped from DWI level to felony level. That's a huge leap. What does a state jail felony look like in Texas?
State jail felonies they're a bit unique to Texas law. It's a kind of hybrid tier. You're looking at a punishment of anywhere from 180 days minimum up to 2 years in a state jail facility.
And these aren't county jails.
No, and they aren't the massive maximum security state prisons either. They are specific facilities that were originally designed for low-level drug and property offenders. But make no mistake, it is a felony conviction on your record.
And a felony conviction basically stays with you for life.
It does. For a non-citizen, it essentially creates a permanent bar for almost any future legal status in the United States.
So the legislature is effectively creating a recidivism trap here. The first time is a warning shot, a serious one, but a misdemeanor. The second time, the hammer really comes down.
Exactly. The law is designed to punish the repetition of the behavior much more harshly than the initial act.
Okay, so that's the offense and the penalty. But in law, there is almost always a yes but clause, right?
Yeah.
Section 51.02 includes something called affirmative defenses.
Right.
Can you just explain for everyone what is an affirmative defense actually? How is that different from just pleading not guilty?
Sure. In a typical criminal trial, the defense strategy is usually, I didn't do it. You are denying the facts. The prosecutor says you crossed the river, you say, no, I didn't.
Okay.
An affirmative defense is completely different. It's the defendant standing up and saying, yes, I did the act, I admit it, I crossed the river, I wasn't at a port of entry, all the facts you stated are true, but D, I have a legal justification that means I shouldn't be punished for it.
So it shifts the burden of proof.
It does, entirely. The defendant now has the burden to prove to the court that they have a valid, legally recognized excuse.
So what are the valid excuses here? What's the legal get-out-of-jail-free card, according to this law?
Well, subsection C lists 3 main categories. The first one is fairly standard. It says it's a defense if the federal government has granted the defendant lawful presence or asylum under 8 U.S.C. section 1158.
That makes sense. I mean, if the feds say you can be here, the state is acknowledging that supremacy. If you have valid asylum status, you aren't an illegal entrant in the eyes of the law.
Correct. The second defense is if the defendant's conduct does not constitute a violation of 8 U.S.C. Section 1325A. That's the corresponding federal statute for improper entry. Essentially, it's a way of saying if you aren't breaking the federal law regarding entry, you have a defense against the state law. It harmonizes them.
Okay, so those first two seem like technical alignments with federal law. But the third one, this one looks really, really specific. It mentions DACA.
Yes. Subsection C3. This is where things get historically interesting. It says, it is a defense if a defendant was approved for benefits under the Federal Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Program. You know it as DACA. But look very closely at the dates in the text.
Yeah, I see it. It's not just DACA in general. It says between June 15, 2012 and July 16, 2021. That is incredibly precise. Why those specific dates? What happened on those days?
Those dates are not random. They define the exact lifespan of the original DACA program before the court stepped in and stopped it. June 15, 2012 was the day the program was created by the Obama administration, and July 16, 2021 is the specific day a federal judge in Texas issued a ruling declaring the program unlawful and blocking any new applications.
Now, so the Texas legislature is essentially saying, we will respect the DACA recipients who got in under the wire before the judge dropped the gavel. But anyone who might have applied after that, you are on your own.
Exactly. It functions as a grandfather clause. It acknowledges the legal reality that existed for those specific recipients while pointedly refusing to acknowledge anyone who might have applied later or under some different future framework.
And speaking of pointedly refusing to acknowledge things, let's look at the very next part, subsection D. This is the invalid defenses section. This feels like the legislature not just closing a door, but bolting it and putting a guard in front of it.
It is absolutely the carve-out section. They're explicitly listing things you cannot use as an excuse in court.
And number one on that list is DAPA, Deferred Action for Parents of Americans and Lawful Permanent Residents.
Right. That was another program proposed by the Obama administration that was meant to protect the undocumented parents of U.S. citizens and green card holders. It never fully took effect because it was blocked by the courts, and the lawsuit that blocked it was led by Texas.
So Texas is basically spiking the football here. They're codifying their court victory.
In a legal sense, yes. They are writing their victory from that lawsuit directly into the penal code. They are saying, for all time, DAPA is not and never will be a valid excuse for being in Texas illegally.
But then they go a step further. Subsection D2, this is the part that feels like it's trying to predict the future. It says that any program that is not enacted by the United States Congress and is a successor to or materially similar to DACA or DAPA is also excluded.
That is the future-proofing clause. It's a very powerful piece of text.
Not enacted by the United States Congress. That feels like a direct shot at executive orders.
It absolutely is. There's no other way to read it. The Texas legislature is drawing a bright line in the sand between laws passed by Congress, which is the legislative branch, and programs created by a president's pen, which is the executive branch.
So they're saying what?
They're saying, we will respect the old DACA program because it's established and has a history, but we will not accept any future programs that look like DACA unless Congress actually passes them into law.
That is fascinating. It basically preempts any future president, 10, 20 years from now, from trying to create a DACA 2.0 via an executive order. Texas is saying right now, don't even bother. If Congress doesn't pass it as a law, our courts won't recognize it as a defense to this crime.
Exactly. It freezes the list of valid excuses in the past. It makes the law static, just like the definition of alien.
Okay, so that covers the first offense, illegal entry, a really complex picture, but that's just the start. What happens if you've already been kicked out of the country? That brings us to Section 4 of our outline, which covers Section 51.03 of the statute, illegal reentry by certain aliens. How is this different from what we just spent all that time talking about?
The key word, as you said, is reentry. Section 51.02 covers the initial act of crossing the line for the first time, or just crossing incorrectly. Section 51.03 is about something else. It's about coming back after the U.S. government has already officially told you to leave. The law views this as a much more serious offense because it involves defying a previous formal order.
So it's not just about your status, it's about your conduct.
It's about defiance.
Okay, so subsection A lists the elements here. It applies if an alien enters, attempts to enter, or, oh, this is interesting, is at any time found in this state.
That phrase, that found in this state phrase, is incredibly powerful. It fundamentally changes the nature of the crime from the first offense.
How so? What does that mean?
Well, under Section 51.02, the illegal entry one, The crime is the act of crossing. It's a specific event in time. You catch them at the river or near the border right after they've crossed. But under 51.03, the illegal reentry section, if you crossed illegally 3 months ago and you are found living and working in Dallas today, you are committing the offense today.
So it's a continuing state of illegality. You can't just say, well, I crossed a year ago, so the statute of limitations is up on that event.
Exactly. The crime is your presence. If you are found and you meet the other criteria, you are guilty of the offense at the moment you were found.
And what are those other criteria? Who specifically does this apply to?
It applies to people who have a history with immigration authorities, specifically people who have previously been denied admission to the U.S. or have been excluded, deported, or removed from the United States.
Okay.
Or if they departed the U.S. while an order of removal was already outstanding against them.
So essentially, if the U.S. government has a record of saying you have to leave or you can't come in, and you are subsequently found anywhere in the state of Texas, you have triggered this section, Section 51.03.
Correct. You have defied the previous order of removal.
Now let's look at the penalties here, subsection B. This looks less like a single penalty and more like a ladder. We start at the bottom rung and climb way, way up.
It is a penalty ladder, and the rungs are spaced very far apart. The base level, the starting point for illegal reentry, is a Class A misdemeanor.
Okay, so let's compare that to the first crime. The initial illegal entry was a Class B. This one starts at a Class A, so it's already one step higher.
Right. And Class A is the highest level of misdemeanor in Texas. That carries up to a year in county jail and a fine of up to $4,000. It's serious, but it's still a misdemeanor. However, for most people who fall under the statute, it will not stay a misdemeanor.
Why not?
Because of the criminal history triggers. The statute says the offense jumps to a felony of the third degree based on why you were removed from the country in the first place.
Okay, let's break down these triggers. So if I'm reading this right, the law is essentially looking at your rap sheet from before you were ever removed.
It is. It's a background check built into the penalty phase. There are 4 main triggers listed here that will automatically bump the charge up to a third-degree felony.
Let's go through them. What's trigger number 1?
Trigger number 1. If the defendant's removal from the U.S. happened after they were convicted of 2 or more misdemeanors involving either drugs or what the law calls crimes against a person.
Crimes against a person. That sounds like things like assault, right?
Exactly. Assault, battery, harassment, making a terroristic threat, things where there is a specific individual victim. So imagine a person who lived in the U.S., got 2 convictions for simple assault or 2 convictions for possession of marijuana, was then deported, and later came back. Just because of those 2 prior misdemeanors on their record, their act of reentry is now a third-degree felony.
And what's the punishment for a third-degree felony in Texas? Remind us of that.
That's 2 to 10 years in a state prison.
Wow. Okay, so we went from up to a year in county jail for the Class A to 2 to 10 years in state prison, just based on 2 prior misdemeanors. That is a steep, steep climb. What's the second trigger?
The second trigger is if the defendant was excluded from the country based on terrorist-related grounds. The text specifically references the federal code, 8 U.S.C., section 1182A3B.
Okay, that one seems pretty self-explanatory. If you were kicked out for being linked to terror groups, coming back is a major felony. I don't think many people will argue with that one.
Agreed. The third trigger is very similar. It's if the defendant was removed pursuant to 8 U.S.C. Chapter 12, Subchapter V. That refers to a set of very specific alien terrorist removal procedures. Again, this is focusing squarely on national security risks.
Okay. And the fourth one?
The fourth trigger is if the defendant was removed pursuant to 8 U.S.C. Section 1231A4B. This one is a bit more obscure. It generally refers to nonviolent offenders who are removed from the U.S. prior to the completion of their prison sentence.
Wait, can you explain that scenario? Removed prior to completion of the sentence.
Sure. Sometimes, to save money on prison space or for other reasons, the federal government or a state will make a deal with a foreign national who is incarcerated. Let's say you are a nonviolent offender serving a 5-year sentence. They might come to you and say, we will let you out after 2 years, but only if you agree to be deported immediately and never come back.
Okay. So it's the kind of conditional early release?
Exactly. And if you take that deal and then come back, you have violated the explicit condition of your release. So Texas says, you broke the deal, so now you face a third-degree felony for being here.
Okay, so that's the middle tier, the 2 to 10 years. But there is one more step up on the ladder, a second-degree felony. This is the top rung for this offense.
This is the highest penalty in this specific section, yes. And it applies if the defendant was removed subsequent to a conviction for any felony.
Any felony. So even a nonviolent one like, say, credit card fraud or something.
Any felony. White-collar fraud, felony theft, drug possession if it was a felony amount, burglary of a building. If you committed a felony, served your time, or got deported as part of the sentence, and then you come back and are found in Texas, you are facing a second-degree felony charge under this new state law.
And what does a second-degree felony carry in Texas? What's the potential sentence?
2 to 20 years in a state prison.
20 years for the act of being found in the state.
Yes. The logic here, at least from the legislature's perspective, is clearly about public safety. They are categorizing individuals based on their perceived risk. If you have a prior felony history, the law presumes you are a higher risk and therefore punishes your mere presence much more severely.
It's intense.
Okay.
We went from a Class B misdemeanor for a first-timer crossing the river all the way up to a potential 20 years in prison for a previously convicted felon coming back. That is a massive, massive spread of penalties.
It is. And before we move on from this section, I just want to point out subsection C. It's a small detail, but an important one. It defines the word removal.
Yeah, I saw that. Why does removal need a definition? Doesn't it just mean deported?
In casual conversation, yes, we use them interchangeably. But in the legal world, deportation is a very specific legal process. But there are other ways to leave the country under order. Subsection C clarifies that for the purposes of this law, removal also includes an order issued under Article 5B.002 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, or, and this is the key part, any other agreement in which an alien stipulates to removal.
Stipulates to removal. That sounds like legal jargon for a plea deal.
That's exactly what it is. Often, a defendant might stand before a judge and say, "Your Honor, I agree to leave the country voluntarily if you drop these charges." This is often called voluntary departure. This subsection closes a potential loophole. You can't come back later and argue, well, I wasn't technically deported by a federal immigration judge. I just agreed to leave on my own.
So Texas is saying, it doesn't matter how you left. If you agreed to go, or if a state magistrate ordered you to go, coming back triggers this reentry statute.
Exactly. If you promise to leave, you have to stay gone.
That brings us perfectly to the final offense in this chapter. We've covered entering. We've covered reentering. Now we have section 51.04, refusal to comply with order to return to foreign nation. This sounds like a showdown in the courtroom.
It effectively is. It's a standoff between the individual and the court. This section describes what happens during a specific procedural failure.
So let's set the scene. What acts actually constitute this crime? Subsection A lists the elements pretty clearly.
3 things have to happen in sequence. 1, the person has been charged with or convicted of an offense under this chapter, so either illegal entry or illegal reentry.
Go ahead.
2, a magistrate or a judge has issued an order for that person to return to the foreign nation they entered from. This is a new power granted to Texas state judges under SB 4, the power to order what is essentially a self-deportation.
And 3.
3, the person refuses to comply with that direct order from the judge.
So let me just picture the scene. You've been caught crossing illegally. The judge looks at you and says, okay, under the Code of Criminal Procedure, instead of sending you to jail for this misdemeanor, I am ordering you to return to Mexico immediately. And the person stands there in court and says, no, I won't go.
That no is the crime.
Is it just the verbal no, or is it also physically refusing to walk across the bridge?
It could be both. It's the refusal to comply with the order. If law enforcement drives you to the international bridge and you refuse to get out of the car and walk across, that is a violation of Section 51.04.
And the legislature takes that refusal very, very seriously, don't they?
Extremely seriously. Subsection B states that an offense under this section is a felony of the second degree.
Whoa. Wait a second. That's the same penalty level as the guy who re-enters after a felony conviction. That's the 2 to 20 years bracket we just talked about.
Yes, it is.
So simply refusing the judge's order is treated just as harshly as being a convicted felon who sneaks back into the country. Why?
The logic here is all about the authority of the court. In the eyes of the law, refusing a direct judicial order is a fundamental breakdown of the legal system. It's not just an immigration violation at that point. It's a direct act of contempt. It is a challenge to the sovereignty and power of the state's judicial system.
It also creates a massive incentive, doesn't it? A pretty powerful one.
A huge incentive. I mean, think about the choice the defendant faces at that moment. Option A, I can comply with the judge's order, return to Mexico, and the underlying criminal charges might be dropped or satisfied. Option B, I can say no, stay here, and now I'm facing up to 20 years in a Texas prison on a whole new felony charge.
It effectively removes any incentive to fight the removal order at that stage. It puts the defendant in a position where complying with the order to leave is the only rational way to avoid a life-altering sentence.
That is the funnel design of the law. Everything is structured to push the individual toward that removal order and compliance with it.
So we have walked through the whole chapter. It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Let's try to recap the structure for everyone listening, just to put it all together.
Sure. I think it helps to think of it as 3 distinct buckets of crime. Bucket number 1 is section 51.02, illegal entry. This is the broad net. It catches anyone crossing the line improperly.
The first-timers.
Right. It's a misdemeanor, but it can escalate to a state jail felony if you do it twice.
Okay, bucket 2.
Bucket 2 is section 51.03, illegal reentry. This is for the repeat players or those with a criminal past. It's about coming back after you've already been removed. The penalties here are severe third-degree or second-degree felonies, depending on your prior criminal history.
And the final bucket.
Bucket 3 is section 51.04, refusal to comply. This is the hard stop. If you were in front of a judge and you refuse that judge's order to leave, you face a second-degree felony immediately.
And running underneath all of this is that foundation we started with, section 51.01, the definitions. The fact that the word alien is locked to the 2023 meaning in port of entry refers to that specific federal list.
And, that is what stands out to me the most about this whole structure. Even though this is a state law, it's right there in the Texas Penal Code. It is completely and utterly dependent on federal citations. You cannot prosecute this law without constantly looking at 8 U.S.C. to define who is an alien, what asylum is, what constitutes a terror-related ground for removal, and so on.
It's like a patch or a plug-in for the federal system. It uses all the federal definitions, but then it applies its own state-level penalties.
That's a really good analogy. It borrows the federal government's dictionary, but it writes its own very different book of punishments.
So we promised at the top of the show we would keep this strictly to the text. And I think we've done exactly that. We've stripped away the noise and just looked at the gears of the machine.
It's a complex machine, for sure, but the mechanics of it are actually pretty clear when you take the time to read the statutes line by line.
Absolutely. Listeners, I really hope this gave you that aha moment so that the next time you hear about illegal entry or Texas SB 4 on the news, you won't just hear a buzzword. You'll know exactly what sections 51.02, .03, and .04 actually do. You'll know about the date lock on the definitions. You'll know about the directly from a foreign nation requirement. You'll be the expert in the room.
That's the whole point, right? That's the power of going at the primary sources.
It is. Before we go, here is a final thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. We talked a lot about how this law freezes the definition of an alien to January 1st, 2023, and how it freezes the DACA defense to a specific date in July 2021. This law is built to be static in a world that is incredibly dynamic.
Yes.
Immigration policy changes, federal administrations change, global politics and conflicts change.
Yeah.
But Texas Penal Code Chapter 51 is written to stand still.
It's like a statue that's been carved in stone while the river of federal policy around it just keeps flowing and changing course.
That's a great way to put it. So the question is, what happens 10 years from now? What happens if the federal landscape looks completely different? Maybe there are new visa categories, new classifications of people, new international agreements. But this Texas law is still pointing to a PDF it downloaded back in 2023.
It creates a fascinating legal time capsule.
It does, and it's a time capsule that might have very complex and probably very unforeseen legal implications down the road.
A potential conflict between a static law and a fluid reality, that is definitely something to think about.
Something to think about indeed. Thank you so much for listening to The Deep Dive. If you learned something today, please share this deep dive with a friend, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out. And check out the website for the full text of the law we discussed today.
Thanks for listening.
See you in the next deep dive.